What happens when one of Hollywood's biggest stars walks onto a daytime talk show expecting a routine, friendly conversation, but instead finds himself in a tense exchange that slowly turns into one of the most uncomfortable moments the show has seen in years? Make sure to subscribe to Talk Show Fallout and like and comment for more talk show coverage. The audience is already on their feet as Dwayne Johnson walks out, smiling, waving, that signature confident energy filling the studio. He greets the hosts one by one, a handshake here, a quick hug there, and finally takes his seat at the table beside Joy Behar and the rest of the panel on The View. The mood at first is exactly what you'd expect, light, upbeat, and easy. Joy leans forward slightly, smiling. You've been everywhere lately. Movies, business ventures, social media. I mean, is there anything you don't do? Dwayne laughs, relaxed. I try to sleep when I can. That's about it. The audience laughs along. It's comfortable. Familiar. Another host jumps in. You've built this image of discipline and positivity. People really look up to that. Dwayne nods. I appreciate that. I just try to stay consistent, you know? Show up, do the work. Everything feels smooth, like a typical promotional appearance. But then Joy shifts slightly in her chair. It's subtle but noticeable. She tilts her head, her tone changing just a bit. Consistency is great, she says, but some people feel like public figures, especially ones with massive platforms like yours, have a responsibility to speak out more on serious issues. There's a small pause. Dwayne keeps his composure. I think everyone has their own way of contributing. Joy doesn't let it go. Sure, but when you have millions of people listening, staying neutral can also be seen as a statement. A few murmurs ripple through the audience. Dwayne leans back slightly, still calm. I wouldn't say I stay neutral. I just choose carefully when and how I speak. Joy presses again, her voice a bit sharper now. But isn't that convenient? Choosing when it's comfortable. The energy shifts. One of the co-hosts glances at Joy, then back at Dwayne, sensing the change. Dwayne's smile fades just a touch. Not gone, but definitely tighter. I don't think it's about comfort, he replies. It's about responsibility. Joy raises an eyebrow. Responsibility to who? To the people listening, he says. To make sure what I say actually helps, not just adds noise. There's a brief silence. The audience is quieter now, more attentive. Joy leans in again. But some would argue that not speaking loudly on certain issues, especially when others in your position do, can come across as avoiding the conversation. Dwayne exhales slightly through his nose. Not annoyed yet, but clearly more focused. I hear that, he says. But I also think people assume they know what someone is or isn't doing behind the scenes. A co-host tries to lighten it. I mean, he's doing a lot, clearly. Joy cuts in gently but firmly. I'm not saying he's not doing anything. I'm saying visibility matters. Now the tension is noticeable. Dwayne turns slightly toward Joy. Visibility does matter. But so does intention. Joy responds quickly. Intent doesn't always translate to impact. A few audience members react, a mix of ooh and quiet murmurs. Dwayne nods slowly. That's fair. But impact isn't always about how loud you are. Joy. But silence can be loud too. That line lands. There's a pause at the table. Another host jumps in, trying to soften things. I think what Joy is getting at is, people look to figures like you for leadership. Dwayne responds calmly. And I take that seriously. That's why I don't treat every moment like a headline. Joy tilts her head again. But headlines are what move conversations. Dwayne's expression tightens just a bit more. Sometimes. Other times they just divide people further. The audience reacts again, some clapping, some staying quiet. Joy doesn't back off. But avoiding division doesn't solve anything either. Now the rhythm of the conversation has changed completely. It's no longer casual, it's a back and forth. Dwayne leans forward slightly now, more engaged. I'm not avoiding anything. I just don't believe every issue needs to be handled the same way. Joy. Or maybe it's about not wanting to upset parts of your audience. There's a noticeable reaction from the crowd, a sharper, oh. One of the co-hosts immediately looks at Joy like, that was direct. Dwayne pauses. This is the first real moment where he doesn't answer immediately. He looks at Joy, then briefly at the table, then back at her. No, he says finally, calm but firmer. That's not what it is. Joy shrugs slightly. That's how it can come across. Dwayne nods once. I understand perception. But perception isn't always reality. The room feels heavier now. Another host tries again. Let's not forget, he's also talked about unity a lot. Joy interrupts again, but not loudly, just persistent. Unity is great, but sometimes unity is used to avoid taking a clear stance. Now even the audience seems split, some clapping, others staying quiet. Dwayne shifts in his chair, posture more upright now. I don't avoid taking a stance, he says. I just don't perform it. That line hits. There's a stronger reaction from the audience, a mix of applause and murmurs. Joy leans back slightly, crossing her arms loosely. So you think others are performing? Dwayne shakes his head. I didn't say that. Joy, it sounded like that. Dwayne keeps his tone controlled. What I'm saying is, everyone handles their platform differently. And that should be okay. Joy nods slowly, but her expression says she's not fully convinced. I agree in theory, she says. But in practice, influence comes with expectations. Dwayne responds, and I meet those expectations in my own way. Joy gives a small, tight smile. Your own way. There's a slight edge there. The conversation pauses for a moment, but the tension doesn't go away. One of the co-hosts quickly pivots. Let's talk about your upcoming project, but the shift feels forced. The audience can feel it too. Dwayne smiles again, but it's not the same relaxed smile from earlier. Sure, he says, we can talk about that. But even as the topic begins to change, the energy at the table hasn't reset. Joy glances at him once more before looking forward, and Dwayne briefly looks down at the table, then back up. The moment hasn't exploded, but something has definitely started. And everyone in the room knows it. The shift to the next topic doesn't land the way it usually does. One of the co-hosts smiles, trying to reset the tone. So your new film, people are really excited about this one. It's a different kind of role for you, right? Dwayne Johnson nods, picking up the thread. Yeah, it's definitely different. It challenged me in ways I hadn't experienced before. He starts explaining the role, talking about preparation, discipline, and the mental side of stepping into something new. His voice is steady, professional. He's clearly done this part of the interview many times. The audience listens, some nodding, a few clapping at certain points. But the earlier exchange is still hanging in the air. About a minute into his answer, Joy Behar glances sideways at him. She waits for a small pause, just enough, and then jumps back in. And does that role touch on any of the real-world issues we were just talking about? She asks. There's a subtle shift again. Dwayne keeps his composure. In some ways, yeah. It deals with personal responsibility, choices, things like that. Joy nods, but she doesn't let the moment pass. So you're comfortable exploring those themes in a movie, but more careful discussing them directly? A few audience members react immediately, a mix of surprised laughter and quiet murmurs. One of the co-hosts looks down briefly, almost bracing. Dwayne turns his head toward Joy, slower this time. I wouldn't frame it like that. Joy shrugs lightly. How would you frame it? There's a short pause. Dwayne leans forward slightly, resting his hands on the table. A movie is storytelling. It's meant to start conversations, not dictate them. Joy responds quickly. And talking here isn't? That lands harder than expected. The audience lets out a low, oh. Dwayne keeps eye contact. This is a conversation, but it's also a very specific format. Joy tilts her head. Meaning? Dwayne exhales, measured. Meaning things can get simplified. Or taken out of context. Joy gives a small smile. Or clarified. A couple of audience members clap lightly. Another co-host jumps in, trying to balance it. I think what he's saying is, there's more nuance sometimes than a short segment allows. Dwayne nods. Exactly. But Joy doesn't step back. Or maybe the nuance makes it easier to avoid being direct. Now the tension is unmistakable. Dwayne's posture stiffens just a bit. His voice stays calm, but there's a firmer edge now. I've been very direct when it matters. Joy, when it matters to you. Dwayne, yes. Because I'm the one speaking. The audience reacts again, louder this time. Joy leans in slightly. But your audience doesn't get to decide when it matters? Dwayne shakes his head. That's not what I'm saying. Joy, then explain it. There's a brief pause. Dwayne looks at her, then briefly out toward the audience, then back again. I'm saying, he begins slower now, that responsibility isn't about reacting to every demand. It's about making thoughtful choices. Joy responds almost immediately. Thoughtful or safe? The table goes quiet. One of the co-hosts lets out a small, nervous laugh. Okay, we are getting into it today. The audience laughs lightly, but it doesn't fully break the tension. Dwayne's expression tightens more noticeably now. Not angry, but clearly less patient. I don't operate from a place of fear, he says. Joy nods. I didn't say fear. I said safe. Dwayne leans back slightly, then forward again. A small movement, but it shows he's engaging more directly now. Safe would be saying nothing at all, he replies. Joy raises an eyebrow. Some would argue that's exactly what happens sometimes. There's a louder reaction from the audience, mixed, divided. Another co-host quickly steps in. I think we're kind of circling the same point here. Joy doesn't interrupt this time, but she doesn't back off either. She looks at Dwayne, waiting. Dwayne nods once, acknowledging the tension. Look, I understand the expectation. I really do. But I also think there's an assumption that if someone isn't saying what you expect, then they're not doing enough. Joy responds, or maybe they're not doing it publicly enough. Dwayne, publicly isn't the only way. Joy, but it's the most visible. Dwayne, visibility isn't everything. Joy leans back slightly, crossing her arms again. It is when you're influencing millions. That line gets a strong reaction, a mix of applause and murmurs. Dwayne pauses again, longer this time. He takes a breath, nodding slightly as if choosing his next words carefully. I respect your perspective, he says. I do. Joy nods back. And I respect yours. There's a brief moment where it feels like things might settle. But then Dwayne adds, I just don't agree with the way you're framing it. The audience reacts again, a sharper energy now. Joy's expression tightens just a little. Not dramatic, but noticeable. How am I framing it? She asks. Dwayne answers directly. Like there's only one right way to use a platform. Joy responds quickly. No, I'm saying there are more effective ways. Dwayne, effective according to who? Joy, according to impact. Dwayne nods. Impact isn't always immediate. Joy, but it should be visible. Dwayne exhales slightly, and for the first time, there's a hint of frustration in that breath. It's not always about being seen, he says. Joy, then how do people know it's happening? Dwayne pauses, and this time the pause feels heavier. Sometimes they don't, he says. That answer creates a ripple through the audience, quieter, more thoughtful reactions. Joy watches him closely. And you're okay with that? Dwayne nods. If the work is real, yes. Joy tilts her head again. But you're asking people to trust that without showing it. Another reaction from the crowd. One of the co-hosts jumps in again, more firmly this time. Okay, I think what we're getting into is the difference between private action and public advocacy. Dwayne nods. Exactly. Joy adds. And I'm saying public advocacy matters more when you have that level of reach. Now the conversation has fully shifted from casual disagreement to a structured debate. Dwayne looks at Joy steadily. And I'm saying it's not a competition. Joy responds. It's not a competition, it's responsibility. Dwayne. Responsibility looks different for different people. Joy. That sounds like an excuse. That line hits harder than anything so far. The audience reacts immediately, louder, sharper, more divided. A co-host quietly says, Wow. Dwayne goes still for a moment. Not frozen, but very still. He looks at Joy, and this time, there's no trace of the earlier lightness. His voice, when he speaks, is calm, but clearly more serious now. It's not an excuse, he says. The room quiets down almost instantly. It's a choice, he continues. Joy holds his gaze. And choices have consequences. Dwayne nods once. They do. There's a pause. A long one. Even the audience seems unsure whether to react. One of the co-hosts finally breaks it, trying to ease things. Okay, this is definitely one of the more intense conversations we've had in a while. A few nervous laughs from the audience. But the tension doesn't fully lift. Dwayne sits back slightly, hands clasped loosely now. Joy looks forward for a moment, then back at him. Neither of them looks away for long. And even though no one is raising their voice, it's clear now that this isn't just a disagreement anymore. It's becoming something deeper. And it's not over yet. The pause lingers longer than anyone expects. You can feel it in the room, the kind of silence that isn't empty, it's full. Full of tension, full of anticipation, full of people waiting to see who's going to speak next. One of the co-hosts finally exhales and tries to bring things down a notch. Okay, I think we can all agree this is a passionate conversation. A few light laughs from the audience, but they're cautious now. Dwayne Johnson nods slightly, still composed, but his posture is different than earlier. He's more still now, more deliberate. Joy Behar adjusts in her chair, uncrossing her arms, then resting one hand on the table. She looks at him again. Let me ask you something directly. That line alone shifts the energy again. Dwayne nods once. Go ahead. Joy leans forward just a bit. Do you think people in your position sometimes benefit from staying just vague enough to keep everyone on your side? A louder reaction from the audience, some surprised, some already murmuring. One of the co-hosts immediately says, half under her breath, "That's a tough question." Dwayne doesn't answer right away. He looks at Joy, then briefly down, then back up again. When he speaks, his voice is still calm. But there's a clear firmness now that wasn't there at the start of the show. I think people in my position get judged no matter what they do, he says. Joy nods. That's part of the job. Dwayne, and I accept that. Joy, then why not be clearer? Dwayne leans forward slightly. Clear to who? Joy answers quickly. To the people who support you. Dwayne shakes his head lightly. That assumes they all want the same thing. Joy, they want honesty. Dwayne's tone sharpens just a fraction. And you think I'm not being honest? The audience reacts, louder this time. Joy holds her ground. I think you're being careful. Dwayne nods slowly. Careful doesn't mean dishonest. Joy, it can mean calculated. That word hangs in the air. Calculated. A co-host quietly says, Okay. Dwayne sits back, then leans forward again, a subtle sign that he's not letting that one slide. Everything I say is calculated, he says. Because words matter. The audience claps, a bit stronger this time. Joy responds immediately. Exactly. So why not use them more clearly? Dwayne's expression tightens again. Not explosive, but you can see the patience wearing thinner now. I am being clear, he says. You just don't like the answer. That line gets a big reaction, some applause, some, oh, from the crowd. Joy tilts her head, a small smile that doesn't fully reach her eyes. Or maybe I'm asking for a better one. That pushes it further. One of the co-hosts jumps in quickly. Okay, let's not make this personal. Dwayne raises a hand slightly, not cutting her off aggressively, but signaling he wants to finish his point. It's not personal, he says. But it is direct. He turns back to Joy. You're asking me to approach things your way, he continues. And I'm telling you I approach them mine. Joy doesn't hesitate. And I'm questioning whether your way is enough. There's another strong audience reaction. Louder, more divided than before. Dwayne pauses again. This time, the pause feels different. He leans back slowly, then forward again, resting his forearms on the table. His voice, when he speaks, is still controlled, but now there's a noticeable edge. What does enough look like, he asks. Joy answers immediately. Taking a stand when it counts. Dwayne, I do. Joy, publicly. Dwayne exhales, a little more visibly now. Not everything needs to be public. Joy, when you have that level of influence, it does. Dwayne shakes his head, more firmly this time. No, it doesn't. That's the first outright contradiction delivered with clear emphasis. The audience reacts again. One co-host leans in. I think what we're seeing here is a difference in philosophy. Joy interrupts, but still focused on Dwayne. It's not philosophy, it's accountability. Dwayne responds quickly now, the rhythm of his speech faster than before. Accountability doesn't mean performing for an audience. Joy, it's not performing, it's leading. Dwayne, leadership isn't one size fits all. Joy, that sounds like avoiding responsibility. That's the second time she's framed it that way. And this time, it lands differently. Dwayne goes quiet. Not because he doesn't have something to say, but because he's choosing how to say it. The room is completely still. Even the audience isn't reacting now. He looks at Joy, steady and direct. I'm not avoiding anything, he says. His voice is lower now, more grounded. I'm choosing how I engage. Joy leans back slightly, but her eyes stay on him. And I'm saying that choice matters. Dwayne nods once. It does. Joy, then why does it feel like you're holding back? That question lingers. Dwayne doesn't answer immediately. He looks at the table for a second, then back up. And when he speaks this time, there's something different. Less polished. More real. Because not everything is as simple as people want it to be, he says. The audience is quiet, listening closely. Sometimes, he continues, people want a quick statement, a headline, something they can agree with or disagree with instantly. Joy responds, softer but still firm. That's part of public conversation. Dwayne nods. But real impact doesn't always happen in those moments. Joy. But those moments still matter. Dwayne, they do. But they're not everything. Joy watches him for a second, then says, You keep saying. That. Dwayne, because it's true. Joy, or because it's comfortable. That word again. Comfortable. And this time it clearly hits a nerve. Dwayne leans back, then forward again, more quickly now. See, that's the part one don't agree with, he says. The audience reacts immediately. They can hear the shift. You keep framing it like it's about comfort, he continues, his voice still controlled but firmer than before. Like if someone doesn't do things the way you think they should, then it must be because they're avoiding something. Joy doesn't interrupt this time. She lets him speak. Dwayne goes on. That's not fair. There's a strong reaction from the audience, applause, mixed with murmurs. Joy finally responds. What's not fair is having influence and not using it fully. Dwayne shakes his head. You don't get to decide what fully means for me. That line lands hard. A louder reaction than anything before. One co-host quietly says, Okay. Joy leans in again, but her tone is slightly more measured now. I'm not deciding it for you. I'm questioning it. Dwayne nods once. And I'm answering you. Joy, not really. That pushes it again. Dwayne pauses. And this is the first time his expression shows clear frustration. Not anger, not explosive, but unmistakable. He exhales, then looks directly at her. I am answering you, he says. You just don't accept the answer. The audience reacts, louder, more engaged than ever. Joy sits back slightly, crossing her arms again. Because it sounds like a deflection. That word, deflection, shifts everything again. There's a sharp reaction from the crowd. One co-host tries again, more urgently this time. Okay, I think we're getting into semantics now. But the momentum is already there. Dwayne shakes his head slowly. No, he says. It's not semantics. He leans forward, his tone still controlled, but now clearly at the edge of his patience. It's perspective. The room is completely locked in now. No one is looking away. No one is interrupting. And for the first time since the interview started, it feels like neither side is willing to step back at all. And whatever comes next is going to decide how this ends. The silence after that last line doesn't feel like a pause anymore. It feels like a turning point. No one at the table jumps in right away this time. The audience is completely quiet, watching closely. Dwayne Johnson sits back slightly, then leans forward again, resting his hands together on the table. His expression is controlled, but there's no trace of the earlier lightness left. Joy Behar looks at him, her posture steady, but she doesn't interrupt. For a moment, it looks like the conversation might just stop there. But Dwayne speaks again. Let me say this clearly, he begins, his tone calm but firm. I respect what you're saying. I really do. The audience stays quiet, listening. But where I lose patience, he continues, is when it turns into questioning my integrity. That line lands heavily. A few people in the audience react with a soft, oh, others nod. Joy shifts slightly in her chair. I'm not questioning your integrity. Dwayne shakes his head once. When you say I'm avoiding responsibility or being calculated in a negative way, that's what it sounds like. Joy responds, her tone still composed but more measured now. I'm questioning how you use your influence, not who you are as a person. Dwayne nods slowly. Those two things are connected. There's a brief pause. One of the co-hosts finally steps in gently. I think this is where these conversations get tricky, because intention and perception don't always line up. Dwayne glances at her and nods. Exactly. Joy looks at the co-host, then back at Dwayne. And perception matters too. Dwayne, it does. But it's not always accurate. Joy, then help people understand it better. Dwayne exhales slightly, but this time it's less frustration and more resolve. I try to, he says. But I'm not going to do it in a way that feels forced or performative. The audience gives a small round of applause. Joy listens, then nods once. I can understand that. That's the first moment where her tone softens noticeably. And I'll say this, she adds. People don't expect perfection. They just want clarity. Dwayne responds, and I believe clarity can look different depending on how you communicate. Joy, that's fair. There's a subtle shift. Not back to light and easy, but less sharp, less confrontational. One of the co-hosts smiles slightly. Okay, progress. A few audience members laugh quietly. Dwayne leans back a little, the tension in his shoulders easing just a bit. Look, I'm always open to learning. I'm always listening. Joy nods. And I'm always going to ask questions. Dwayne gives a small smile. I figured that. That gets a light laugh from the audience, the first genuine one in a while. But even with the lighter tone, The weight of what just happened is still there. Another co-host quickly pivots again. Before we run out of time, I do want to ask, what do you hope people take away from your new project? Dwayne nods, grateful for the shift but still grounded. I hope they take away the idea that growth isn't always visible. That change doesn't always happen in big, loud moments. As he speaks, the audience listens more comfortably again, some nodding. Joy doesn't interrupt this time. She watches, then adds once he finishes, "That's a message I think people can connect with." Dwayne nods back. "I hope so." The conversation continues for a few more minutes. Lighter topics, a few laughs, even a quick joke from one of the hosts that gets the audience clapping again. But the earlier exchange isn't forgotten. You can feel it in the way everyone is a little more careful, a little more aware. As the segment wraps up, the co-host smiles toward the camera. "We'll be right back." The audience applauds as the cameras pull back slightly. Dwayne stands, shaking hands with the hosts again. When he reaches Joy, there's a brief moment, not awkward, but noticeable. They exchange a few quiet words off mic. Both nod. Then he gives a small smile and steps away. The segment ends. But the conversation doesn't. Within minutes of the episode airing, clips start circulating online. The exchange between Dwayne Johnson and Joy Behar becomes the focal point. Short clips, captions, reactions, everything spreads quickly. Some viewers side with Dwayne, saying he handled the situation with patience and stayed respectful under pressure. Others agree with Joy, arguing that public figures with massive platforms should be more direct and visible on important issues. On platforms like YouTube, X, and TikTok, the debate grows. Comments pour in. Dwayne stayed calm the whole time. Joy was just asking the tough questions. He lost patience but didn't lose control. This is what real conversation looks like. Clips are replayed, analyzed, slowed down. People point out the exact moment his tone changed. Others highlight the questions Joy kept returning to. Media outlets pick it up too, discussing whether the exchange crossed a line or simply reflected a real, necessary debate. By the next day, it's one of the most talked about talk show moments of the week. Behind the scenes, reports suggest that after the show, the two spoke briefly again. A more relaxed conversation, away from cameras. No shouting, no drama, just a continuation of the discussion, this time without an audience. Neither side issues a negative statement afterward. Instead, both move forward. Dwayne continues promoting his project, while Joy addresses the moment briefly on the next episode, saying, "We had a strong conversation, and that's what this table is for." The audience applauds. And just like that, the moment becomes part of the show's history. One of those exchanges people remember, replay, and debate long after it ends. Because it wasn't scripted. It wasn't polished. It was real, uncomfortable, and honest. The kind of moment that live television sometimes creates when no one backs down. And now it's your turn. What do you think? Was Dwayne Johnson right to stand his ground? Or did Joy Behar raise valid questions that needed to be asked? Share your opinion in the comments and subscribe to Talk Show Fallout for more real talk show stories.